once we as women hit 40, 50, 60, and beyond, it becomes pretty obvious that what worked in our 30s, our 20s, and even early 40s is just not going to cut it anymore. We might find it more difficult to lose weight. We might find it more difficult to put on muscle to stay toned. We might have a loss of energy, sleep, things such as that. But what becomes so clear to us as women is we have to make some changes. And I almost feel like this is decade by decade because I know when I hit 50, it was a wake up call that I needed to change things up. And then I'm now almost 63. When I hit 60, I had to revamp things again, specifically my daily movement. So, not so much my exercise or training program, but I had to move more to basically, not so much maintain weight, but to make it easier to maintain weight, easier to stay fit and energized. Today's guest is an absolute expert in this field. I have with me today Alicia Jones. She is a highly recognized health and fitness expert. She has over 17 years of experience working with women and helping them to transform their lives over 50 through fitness and weight loss. Alicia has appeared on various health and wellness television programs and has produced and hosted Health Matters and The View Health and Wellness on Rogers TV. She is a contributor to publications like Huffington Post, Alive Magazine, and MindbodyGreen. She has also been featured on Shape Magazine, Very Well Fit, and Aaptiv, I'm assuming that's how that's said. Alicia has a BA in kinesiology and holds several certifications, including National Coach of Canada, Advanced Sports Nutrition Certified Group Fitness Instructor. We have that in common. Personal trainer. We also have that in common. And Can Fit Pro, among many, many others. Alicia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I like that we have some certifications in common. I'm sure we've probably seen each other in the same workshops or classes.
Yeah, we probably have. My start was group fitness, and it's really funny because I never intended to go into group fitness. I was kind of pulled in by my personal trainer at the time who opened his own studio, and I was really a shy, introverted person. And so the idea of getting up on stage and doing all of these things and having the microphone and telling other people in the room what to do terrified me. And so I was kind of drug in. And then once I did it, I was like, oh, wow. I really, really like this a lot. And that was the trajectory for me that kind of took off. Was it something similar for you, or did you start young with group fitness and it
Oh,
moved from
I
there?
I did not start young. I actually started more in the triathlon field, like triathlon and marathons. Actually, I saw a post that you had done that you had also been doing marathons for a long time. So that was my thing, and it was because I was very introverted. So I was more on the one-on-one types of sports, and I was like, I love this, and it was my getaway. And after that, I was going through a rough period and I ended up in the gym a lot, and the people in the gym were my community. I started lifting weights there and I was just like, I absolutely love this. I knew it was my thing, but I also loved teaching classes. I don't know why, but I was great with the classes. I loved doing it. I think it's because like as an introvert, it's really easy when you have one subject to talk about. You're like, you could talk about it forever. You could do it forever. You could meet people through that one subject. And so it became a connection with other people that maybe I wasn't able to get quite as much because I was introverted. So I love that. And then I went on, which was great because you're creating really strong connections with one person and really getting to know them. And that works really well for an introvert.
It does. You're right. We have that in common, the introverted. And I did group fitness to personal training. And I remember it was an adjustment, like how to talk to that person as opposed to talking to a whole group. And then when you're group fitness, you can feel a little bit like a cheerleader, like, go, go, go. And personal training is a little quieter, a different
Yes.
pace, a little slower. You're connecting with the individual. So I relate to that so much. And marathons, I did my fair share of those back in the day which I want to dive into this because that was kind of my wake up call. So in my early 40s, I'm a late bloomer. I do everything late. I did bodybuilding shows at 50. It's like I do everything late. Started a business in my 50s. But I was running marathons and I was doing boot camps because I had this instructor I love the boot camps for. And then I would go to spin class and I did this excessive amount of cardio. And I remember I started running because I thought, my legs are looking kind of flabby and I think this will help. Oh no, things got worse. I didn't have so much of a weight gain problem, but I definitely had a body fat issue where my body fat was going up as I went through my 40s. It was more in the midsection. I was
Mhm.
losing muscle tone. And that
Yeah.
was the first wake up call that, maybe all of this cardio isn't serving me well. Can you
Mhm.
talk about the changes that happen to us, especially in our 40s?
Yes, and actually, now that you mentioned that too, because I again was in like marathons and triathlons, that sort of thing. I remember a picture of me in a tank top holding my cat, and I looked at my arm and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what happened there?" There was zero muscle. It was flabby. It was like that was my wake up call when I saw that picture. But basically, what happens is with age. Especially as you're going through menopause and the perimenopause to menopause transition into postmenopause, one of the hormones that tends to get out of whack is cortisol. Cortisol rises a little bit higher. That's because your adrenals are trying to help kick in and produce some estrogen. So it's easier to become more fatigued with your cortisol levels. And so what you're doing when you're doing marathons and triathlons is you're doing exercise that is longer than 45 minutes, this time period where cortisol levels, they rise high, they stay elevated for a long period of time. And while we need some cortisol, we need that for energy and for vibrance in our lives. When you are exposed to cortisol for a very long period of time with your workout, it's catabolic. That means it breaks down lean muscle. And so even if you did a gym workout beforehand, you then go and do your run, or you're doing your swim or whatever activity you're doing for that really long period of time, you're breaking down the lean muscle that you may have worked hard in the gym to create in the first place. So that's the first thing. The next thing we know with age, after our 20s, uh, for every decade that passes, we lose more and more lean muscle. And lean muscle, that is what is in charge of making us look toned, making us strong, and also for helping boost the metabolic rate because it's incredibly active. Muscle needs a lot of energy to be the size that we need it to be without bulking up. For women that don't want to bulk up, it doesn't mean we turn into huge Arnold Schwarzeneggers, but we need enough energy to fuel that muscle. And so a lot of times what women do is they do the diet mentality. So they cut back on calories for a long period of time. And at the same time, they add more runs, more intensity to their workout. And they're in a state, this catabolic state for a long period of time. And so they keep on breaking down their lean muscle. And also we have to take into consideration that protein synthesis, that goes down. So our ability to create more lean muscle goes down, and protein degradation or the breakdown of muscle, that goes higher. It accelerates with age. And so basically what's happening is you have the breakdown already happening. And then on top of it, you're giving it activities that are going to further break things down. And that's when people start to feel like I am working out, I'm doing what I used to do, but now instead of looking toned, feeling firm, I'm starting to feel like I've got some belly fat going on, which is usually cortisol related belly fat at that point. And at the same time, I don't look strong and toned. I'm flabby.
Yes, I can relate to that. That was exactly what was happening to me because I really wasn't the only weights I would touch was kind of that boot camp thing, which was, I
Mhm.
guess, better than nothing. But that's basically cardio. You're
Mhm.
you're hitting the floor and doing burpees, or you're doing a lot of push-ups or squats and repetition after repetition. So it was really glorified cardio. But I remember every time I would prep for a marathon, I did the Boston twice. I would put on a good 5 pounds, and I knew it wasn't 5 pounds of body fat. It looked like puffy, like inflammation. Now, I didn't at the time understand that's what it was, but looking back, I'm going, oh my gosh, I was so inflamed at that time.
Mhm.
I was, it was all through, you could see it on my face and that puffiness. And like you, I looked at a picture, and for me, it was my knees. There's like this old commercial. I'll date myself, when I was a little girl, and it was for pantyhose, and I'm trying to remember how it went, but this woman was at the zoo with her child, and her child pointed out that that the mother's knees looked like the elephant's knees at the zoo. So
Oh.
because of the, kind of that saggy, wrinkly, and I remember looking at that, thinking of that silly commercial and going, oh no, this is not okay. Yes, we age, the skin gets, loses that collagen. Yes, we can get a few little bags and sags, but it was just unacceptable what I was seeing. And that was when
Mhm.
I went, oh boy, I better do
Mhm.
something now.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's hard for a lot of people because they think they're doing the right thing. So they think, oh my goodness, this is my age. This is it. This is what I'm destined to look like, do, be, feel, because there's nothing like I'm already doing all of the things I'm supposed to do. But the formula for your fitness and the formula for your nutrition, it shifts with age. And so if you're doing the old things that you were doing that used to work, and now you're in a different age category, that's when you're going to start to feel frustrated, feel like, oh my goodness, what's happening? Is this just inevitable? This is what's going to happen to me. So I'm so glad that you were like, no, I need to do something about this. It wasn't like, oh, I can't do something. It's like, what am I going to do about it? Which is really important.
Oh yeah, it was just unacceptable to me. I was going to find a way, and that's kind of what brought me into lifting weights. So we've talked about the things that don't work for women over 40, over 50. What are the things that do work for us?
Mhm. Yes. So first off, if you do love running or you love your marathons, there's a way of doing that where you can still incorporate it into your life. So it's not like you have to give it up. But one of the things you definitely have to do is swap out some of those long run days for weight training for sure. You need to start weight training, and you need to progress yourself. You do competitions, so you know all about periodization and progressing yourself. You don't just stay in, for example, one type of repetition range and do that repetition range day in and day out. You've got to lift heavy in order to really start to get your muscles to activate. We no longer have the same estrogen levels with age that we used to have. And estrogen, it creates power in our muscular contractions. It creates force. And so if you have less estrogen, how are you going to get more power and force? You have to go through heavy weightlifting cycles. At the same time, you don't always want to be staying there because repair rates, they go down with age. So you need to make sure that you are able to recover and repair. Otherwise, you start to feel like you were talking about inflamed all the time. You start to feel inflamed. You start to feel achy, sore. Your joints hurt. You don't understand why you're not recovering, and you gain weight. Some from the inflammation, but also some because your gut microbiome is not working the same. You're inflamed all the time. Also, you don't even realize it, but you could be pushing yourself towards more insulin resistance. And so it's so important to lift. It's so important to periodize yourself, which means you go through periods of lifting heavier, lifting lighter, and making sure that you have proper recovery in between.
Mm. I'm glad you're hitting on the recovery. I was telling you, of course, off camera that I'd recently had a back surgery, a long problem that I had for over 8 years when I had an injury 8 years ago, and it
Mhm.
just kept coming back and coming back. So finally had to have the surgery. But I think a lot about recovery. That's such a tricky one because this is what I run into with clients. It's like this all or nothing. They're either skipping their recovery or they're almost a little bit, I don't want to use the paranoid word, but fearful. So then they won't push themselves enough to see progress. So they'll back off almost too much.
Mhm.
So how do we find that sweet spot?
Well, I think first it depends. I don't know about your own clients, but for my clients, it depends on where they're starting from. If you have somebody that's a complete beginner and they're just starting out, it's really easy to say 2 to 3 times a week is going to get you results. When you're first starting out with weight training or with any sort of exercise, if you haven't been doing any, a little goes a really long way. You can get a lot of results with very little amount of exercise, but great quality exercise. When you have been lifting for a long period of time, or you have been exercising for a long period of time, that's when things get a little bit tricky because you do need to push yourself to that next level. Our body adapts to what we give it. And so, as you probably know, like maybe when you first started lifting weights, you could lift 10 pounds or 15 pounds, but now you can lift 45 pounds and you've got to push yourself through those zones depending on what's going on. So I think it really depends on what level you're at. If you're just starting out, try and have anywhere from 24 to 72 hours off in between your weightlifting sessions. If you're more advanced and your body is very adapted, it's more, and you want to lift more. Let's say you want to lift 4 days or 5 days of the week, something along those lines. What are you doing every day? So one day, maybe you're lifting very heavy. Maybe the next day you're doing more of a recovery session where you're lifting lighter weights. And that's going to allow for lactic acid reabsorption. It's going to allow for the blood to flow. And with blood flow, that is what gives us the ability to repair. So that's more along the lines of what you would do. It really depends on your level and what you're doing right now.
I like that you were hitting on, if I heard you correctly, that, okay, so you're taking some time off between the actual strength training, but then maybe you're doing other things on those off days. Is that correct? Like
Yes.
movement-based, yoga, things such as that?
Yes, relaxation. And if you, I think if I heard you correctly too, like your clients, some of them, they get fearful if they take time off, right? Like it's like, oh my goodness, I'm
Hmm.
going to lose all of my
Yes.
progress. I can't take a day off. But if you're doing alternative exercise, maybe stretching, rehabilitation, lighter Pilates, swimming, walking, that sort of thing, that allows for blood flow. It allows you to feel like you're doing something. It allows you to create mobility and it helps you to recover. So you want to do exercises like that. That doesn't, I think for a lot of people, that doesn't equate or count as exercise for them. So they're like, I'm going to lose everything. But just remember, when you go hard or lift heavy or do intense things, that's a catabolic state. You break down your lean muscles so that you can build it to a new strength, a new level. And so if you do not have that time off in between from that intense exercise, you're constantly in a state of breakdown. And that's where the flabby lack of strength and feeling inflamed comes in.
Mm. Yeah, I was always prone to push it to that point, coming from being a marathon runner, and then I was a distance cyclist too,
Mhm.
and did a lot of things like snowshoeing, cross country skiing, all of the endurance activities. So my
Mhm.
tendency was always to hit the gym, and yeah, I'd be lifting, but all of a sudden it would be turning into an endurance session, if you know what I mean,
Mhm.
because
Yep.
I have a very good cardiovascular base and it just automatically takes me there. I enjoy it. And so I think for some people, that's hard to put that recovery in, but I love the idea of always having something daily, because now that's a switch I saw happen in my 60s. Like I used to be able to take one full day off, like maybe go get a massage and not do any movement really other than housework or whatever. Now I find I've got to do something on the daily. It's not strength training on the daily. It's
Mhm.
not anything hard on my body on the daily, but it's got to be a walk or it's got to be active stretching. There has to be movement in there every single day.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. And it also really depends on where you are in your life cycle. So, for example, if you're in perimenopause, then you may need actual rest days where what you're doing is learning how to meditate or deep breathe or maybe a lighter yoga session. Whereas if you are in postmenopause, you're probably at a more balanced level of your hormones. If you're on hormone replacement, you're extra balanced no matter where you are. But and so you may notice that when you were in perimenopause, it was harder. You needed more days off or different types of activity. But then once you got into postmenopause and you're more balanced with your hormones, you're able to then do more, or you want to do more, or you feel like your energy and your strength is coming back to you to be able to do something every day.
I love that you made that point because perimenopause is kind of its own, it's like its own thing. It's its own
Mhm.
time of life. And I've told clients, trust me, it'll actually be a little easier once you're over 50 and you go through this transition. You'll actually have a little bit more leeway because things are balanced out. And if you're doing HRT, you'll have a little bit more leeway. Perimenopause is like this roller coaster. So even the wrong type of, for lack of a better word, dieting can be
Mhm.
an issue, like intermittent fasting. Okay, it might be fine for somebody who's 52, but really push a 44-year-old woman over the edge.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned that as well. And I think that's also every every tactic you do, every strategy, you need to look at where you're at. What are your hormones doing? What is your age? What is your activity level? What is your stage of life? All of these play a factor because it also plays a factor if you are postmenopause, but you are an entrepreneur like yourself and you are working your tushy off and your stress hormones are going through the roof and maybe pushing really hard all the time in the gym is just gonna once again feed into that higher cortisol level, and so you start to feel that breakdown process again. It really depends on what's going on with you, your age and stage of life, your hormones, and your health.
Mm. Yeah, I was actually so fortunate because I didn't heed any of that and pushed, especially the second half of my 40s, nearing menopause.
Mhm.
I was just an exercise fiend, as I mentioned, and didn't sleep well at night, didn't take recovery. It's a wonder that my poor body made it
Oh.
through to the other end because I made all the mistakes. I did all of the things, and like you said, actually broke down muscle. I wasn't really able to put on any muscle. Now, I wanted to shift gears a little bit because I see this come up a lot, and I'm sure you have too. Getting a client who doesn't like exercise. And I mean,
Mm.
you ask them, is there anything you've ever enjoyed? No. Do you like to dance? No. Do you like to play team sports?
Mhm.
No. Pickleball? No. You know, you're trying to find something and they truly don't like doing it. And
Mhm.
I find that of all the scenarios, because I guess I don't understand it, I find that the most challenging.
Yeah, so it's actually funny you mentioned that. So half of the population in this world is going to be like that. They're called exercise non-responders. And so they on a level, probably the same reason as you, I got into running and doing longer distance because there's the runner's high. There's that feeling
Mhm.
after a swim or a run or a bike where it's like, I did this thing and I feel so good. And don't get me wrong, there are days that you do it, especially if you're in an overtraining state or you're doing too much, that you're like, oh, this doesn't, I have to slog through the whole thing. But it's still that feeling that we're going for, that dopamine rush. Whereas half of the population is not going to get that. And so physiologically they have this same reaction or responses that we do. So our serotonin level over time, our happy hormones go up, we do balance hormones better, it helps with weight loss, we enhance our strength, enhance lean muscle. All of this happens whether you like exercise or not. If you exercise, so it is invalid, you have to exercise no matter what group you're in. But it is like I empathize with you if you are one of the individuals that do not like exercise, because you have to find a way to push yourself that is going to be outside of the box, because you're not going to get that feel good feeling. So what is it for you? What is your why? So a good example for me, I lift weights and I do it every single week. But the truth is, I don't love weightlifting. I love running. I love cycling. I love swimming. I love all of that for the rush that I get, but I don't love weightlifting. But why do I do it? I do it because I feel strong, because I do activities with my niece and nephew that my brother and sister-in-law can't do. They're lying on the couch. They're like, you go play with the kids. I don't have the energy for this. I have the strength to do that. We moved house. I moved my own boxes. I'm this energy that I have that goes throughout the day, and the strength to walk upstairs or to live my life. That for me is my big why. That's why I continue to lift weights. And it doesn't hurt that I can look good in outfits. It's really nice that I can, wear outfits that I've had for years, or that like go to an event and I'm like, yeah, I'm looking pretty good. Once my hair is dyed, I'm looking pretty good. But but that's my big why. And I think that is what, if you do not respond to exercise, you need to search for. Why are you doing this? Are you finding that you can't get up a flight of stairs anymore, or you're winded? And that's something that's really important, because you're starting to see the effects of age. Or I think a big, almost crystal ball is to look at your family members. Are they healthy, or are you starting to need to take care of your parents, or is there certain health conditions they have? Because that's you. You are genetically connected to these people. So that means that's a possibility for your future. Is that something that scares you, to think that could potentially be you? Is that something that you want to work towards ensuring doesn't happen to you? Or do you just want to look really good in an outfit? These are all things that you need to find your deep why. And I also suggest that you do get help with that, because at the end of the day, the why, sometimes we forget that why when we're waking up a little bit earlier to go for a workout, and we're like, nah, we're just going to press snooze. So having somebody that you're accountable for, like a coach, like yourself or myself, or a group that you need to hold yourself accountable to and meet, or a class that you've signed up for, you paid for. Those are things that can help push you into, yes, okay, I have to do this. I've got my why, and I've got this thing that I am now being held accountable for.
Yeah, hitting that why is, as you know, so crucial, because you're not going to be motivated every day. And it's really funny because I'll get messages, as I'm sure you do. And one thing that drives me crazy is to, pick up my phone and get a message that says, on my Instagram or whatever, I wish I had your motivation. And I get so frustrated with that because I don't feel motivated every day. I don't feel motivated to go for a walk when it's, a little hotter than usual outside. Or maybe I didn't sleep well, and I don't feel like driving to the gym. Or it's, 6 a.m. and I've got to do an early morning workout. So relying solely on that feeling of motivation, that, yeah, we can feel that in the beginning. People are excited. I'm sure you see this too. Beginning of the year, they start a new this, new that nutrition plan. So excited. But the minute those challenges come in, motivation isn't enough to carry them through. So it's almost really like you got to get into your thinking brain and come back to, why am I doing this? And how important is this to me on a scale of 1 to 10?
And I think it's also looking at those bad feelings. For example, as fitness experts, I'm sure that we eat fairly healthy almost all the time. Like, not saying 100% of the time, but we are willing to do the things. And at the end of the day, for somebody who is working, who is taking care of parents, who is doing all the things, at the end of the day, it's just about getting healthier to do that sort of thing. So it's not about being perfect. It's not about having everything pristine, never going out to a restaurant ever again, never never having birthday cake again, never. And I think what happens is that people feel good or bad. They feel really guilty because they didn't do all the things, or they feel like they're on track. But the truth is that there's always, for anybody, expert or not, going to be days when life happens, things pop up, and maybe you don't have your Tupperware with you with your food. Maybe, you're in a place that you have to, go through a drive-through and choose the healthier of the options there and what they have. Maybe those days are going to happen. They happen for everybody. It's the choice of what you're going to do with it. And so I think if you can get more in the mentality of these things are going to happen, I'm not going to feel guilty about it. That's a part of life. And then I'm going to keep back on track. I think that's going to help with motivation, because a lot of the things that demotivate is the fact that you feel like you can't do it. You can't keep it up. It's not realistic for you in your life. So how can you make it realistic? How can you say, okay, I had that day where that meal wasn't the meal I had planned on cooking at home or having at home, but I'm just going to get right back to it. It can help a lot.
Good point. Good point. That one of the hardest things I ever had to do, because bodybuilding's extreme. I no longer do competitions. I did my last one, let me see, 2 years ago. It's extreme. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going to that extreme, but you're kind of white knuckling it near the end. Like you're just looking for the end. It's not a lifestyle. And so what people see when I step on that stage, the 6-pack, 8-pack abs, and every line of the muscles showing, and that is just kind of almost smoke and mirrors. It's a moment in time that's not sustainable. Real life is kind of over here. And one of the hardest things I had to do when I stopped competing was refine my why. First of all, why am I doing this if I'm not doing it to step on stage? And how does this look? And how do I find something that's doable with eating out and traveling and maintain a fitness level? And it took me a minute to tap into that. I felt like I was kind of swirling around going, which way do I go? And so I've seen what it's like to be on the extreme and feel like your motivation is diving down because you're just exhausted trying to keep all these food rules, and then being on the other end.
Yeah. And you know what you did with competitions, you're an athlete with that. That is a sport within and of itself. Like there is a strict regimented way of eating. There is a strict way of lifting. That is, you have to be in the mindset. You have to be in the nutrition. You have to be pristine with that. And you have to bring your A game to that. And so that makes you an athlete for doing that. Absolutely. And if that is what you're trying to achieve, then yes, you have to pretty much be perfect and on your A game for your workouts and your nutrition, or else you will not win in any of the competitions. I think it is that I can only imagine how it was for you switching to the mentality of, okay, this is for everyday life. This is for health. This is still for looking good, but it's a completely different way of being. And actually, they find that many who went from competition to everyday life, they actually go into this huge, like, who am I, loss of self-esteem, and they end up gaining a lot of weight. And so for you to have come out on the other end, that's amazing, because you were able to make that transition, and that in and of itself is an incredibly hard transition to make.
Yeah, mindset is huge. And it did take a while to go from one reality to another reality. Now, looking at food, we're talking a little bit about nutrition and how strict it had to be for bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think women should be eating in their 40s, their 50s? Is it changing from decade to decade? What should
Yes,
that look like?
it's first off, it's not necessarily like, I mean, it's definitely changing. We're going to talk about macronutrients and how macronutrients change with age for sure. But if you ate really healthy when you were younger, that actually has an accumulative effect. So it's going to help you in your older age. If you haven't, it's still not too late, because I get a lot of women who say to me, is it too late? I've never been healthy. I've never really lifted weights or really liked to exercise. So now, Emma, is it too late for me? It's never too late. You can still enhance lean muscles, strength. You can still lose weight. You can still feel your very best as you're getting older. And in fact, I have clients that are in their 70s and they say, I've never felt as good as I do now. And they're in their 70s, even when they were in their 30s and their 20s. So that says a lot. But if you were eating healthy when you were younger, it has an effect where it helps you out as you're getting older. That being said, we know that protein levels, they go up with age. So we talked a little bit about the fact that you're breaking down more protein with age. And at the same time, you're not able to repair or synthesize protein at the same degree. It's a little bit slower. So you need every little bit of help you can get. On top of lifting weights, you also need to increase your protein levels. And if you're active and if you are in a state of lifting more weights, then you do need more protein, because remember, with your activity, you're breaking down more lean muscle in that catabolic. And so during the times of recovery, even during your workout, you need to have something to replenish that so you can build more lean muscle. So protein levels rise up. Carbohydrates, we need carbohydrates. You need carbohydrates for healthy thyroid function. You need carbohydrates in order for you to suppress cortisol, which, to keep it more buffered or in a more balanced state. So you need carbs, but our carbohydrate level, it may decrease depending on what is going on with you, your health, and your hormones again. So carbohydrates might not be as much as you used to, but what we do know for sure is that you can't just get away with eating the donuts all the time. You're going to probably feel that inflammation, the insulin levels, you're going to become insulin resistant, you risk type 2 diabetes, because we cannot tolerate carbohydrates to the same degree, especially simple refined carbohydrates. So we need healthy refined carbohydrates, and we need omega-3 fatty acids for sure to help with that inflammation, to help with cognition, with our brain health. We need to have omega-3s. Preferably from animal sources, because they do have bioavailability, like better bioavailability. If you eat a piece of salmon and you get omega-3s from the salmon than if you were to get it from flax or from hemp seeds, for example. But both are excellent. And if you're vegan or vegetarian and that's your choice, for whatever reason, you can still get in omega-3s. It's just you'll probably need a lot more of them, because it doesn't have the same bioavailability, so your body's not able to use what you're putting in there to the same degree.
Yeah, carbs are something that it kind of got in the media, got on social media, that, okay, you're over 50, you got to have a, high fat, low carb. I have personally found, working with clients that doesn't always serve them very well, unless there's a situation, with regulating blood sugar and you need to temporarily go to more of a very ultra low carbohydrate diet. But I know for myself, I don't feel good if the fat's really high and the carbs are really low. Yes, we need fats, so important. But something I've seen is they're overdone. They're very calorically dense, and so women hear, oh, it's healthy to have nuts. So it's all day long with the, which I
Yeah.
get it. I could go all day long with nuts too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Me too. And then actually, I don't even like having them too much as a snack. I put some peanut butter in my smoothie or something like that, but I wouldn't have it as a snack because it never fills me up.
Me
Because the
neither.
amount that's a proper portion size, yeah, it's small, right? It's like
It's like
that
this
was
little.
it. Yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. Yeah, and you make a good point. It's like, what is your goal? Is your goal weight loss? Is your goal health? Is your goal weight loss for health? Like, what is your goal? Because if you don't care, like I have some clients that say, I don't care if I lose weight or if I don't lose weight. I just
Mhm.
want to get strong. I just want to feel healthy. Well, if that's the case and you want the nuts, then go for the nuts, because it's got healthy fats in it. And if you gain weight with it or you lose weight with whatever, you don't care, so great. That's fine. But yeah, so you do need to have fats. What they find is if you exercise more, which I know everybody listening to this, whether you're exercising now or you're going to be exercising, everybody wants to exercise with age, because it is really what is in charge of our strength, our lean muscle. It's going to give us our better quality of life with age. So everyone's working out, you need to have carbs. We know that recovery rates are less. You're not able to recover as much. You're going to feel sore and achy for days, especially for women going through the perimenopause into postmenopause transition. If you're anywhere from the perimenopause to postmenopause, you need to have your carbohydrates to help you with recovery, especially because we all know that as you get into your lifting, you're going to go through cycles of lifting heavier weights where you really need to put those weights down. And that means you're probably using your intramuscular stores of carbohydrates, the glycogen that's in your muscle, in order to fuel your contractions of your muscle, which means you need to replenish those. Otherwise, you don't even have energy to lift heavier weights. And we've already learned that is a detriment, because you need to be lifting heavier weights at certain times, right? So you need your carbs.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Now, ratio wise, now I know it's going to depend on stage of life, the individual, how much they exercise, but what are your recommendations ratio wise with macronutrients, like 30% calories coming from protein, 35%, 1 gram per pound
So
of body weight?
yeah, so it is really specific to a person. Like in my program, we go through the math together and we are calculating for you specifically. And then we do it again for your hormones and your health conditions. So that's how specific it is. And it really does shift. What I can say is that on average, if let's say you're in your 50s, it would be, if you're not active at all, it's like a gram of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Hmm.
That's what you're looking for. If once you hit 65, you start to go through another level of degradation. So that breakdown of lean muscle, it's going to accelerate. So you need a lot more. So it could be anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 grams. And now there are more studies coming out in the 70 plus category that are saying even higher than that. So, but on average, 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, depending on what you're doing. The more active you are, the more you're going to need, because you're breaking things down. And so it really does depend on your activity level and what your exact age is, and also what's going on with your hormones. So we've talked, if you had thyroid issues in the past, you're going to need a higher rate or a higher percentage of carbohydrates than somebody who has had a clean bill of health. Nothing's really happened with their health wise, and they're not lifting weight. They're doing 2 times a week. They're just starting out with their weight training. That's going to be a lot different for them. So again, it really depends on what's going on with you. But on average, think about protein first and just worry about getting your protein in.
That's kind of what I do, and the fats and carbs might vary day to day with me, but they tend to work them. If I hit the protein goal, the other two tend to work themselves out more or less, and I don't have as much of an issue if I focus on that, fill my plate with protein, vegetables, and then from there look at the carbs and fat. And boy, you hit on it with the connection between the thyroid and the carbs. I learned that one the hard way. The listeners know this story. I've told it quite a bit, but I did a competition about 8 years ago, and the coach at the time, he was a good coach, so nothing bad to say, but the whole keto thing was really, raging at the time. And so he put me on a modified keto. So it wasn't the keto like bacon fat and 60% fat or anything like that. It was still high protein, no carbs, and then just fats in place of the carbs. And initially, I looked great. Like my body looked great. Then there was a tipping point. I began to look worse. By the time I got to stage, I looked soft. There was no muscle showing. And then after, I had to go on a thyroid medication because my thyroid ceased to function properly
Oh,
after the months
yes.
of doing that.
Oh, and I think, again, I don't know your coach and I don't know their background at all, but I think it something like that. We find with the studies that men do better with ketogenic plans
They
and with
do.
fasting protocols. And a lot of the studies that are done either pool men and women together, or they were initially done on men. And so that's really important. Things are starting to change. We're starting to have more research that is done on women in the 50 plus, women in the 40 plus, and with the perimenopause to postmenopause transition. But a lot of the things we hear are good for us, like keto or like intermittent fasting. The research is done on men. So if you get somebody who has read this research and is like, this works, and they are putting it on somebody that is a woman that is going through their transition or they're in the postmenopause, it is going to get you a different outcome. We are very different than men when it comes to training and what works and what doesn't. And that is really important, that we find somebody who can give us something that is going to work for our bodies.
So important. And you're right. Most of those studies are done on men. A lot of them are done on athletic young men, like
Mm-hmm.
19 years old,
Yep.
as far from our body, chemistry and composition and hormones as possible. But
Mm-hmm.
they don't like to do the studies on women. I know, because no matter what age woman you choose, the variability, all of the hormonal fluctuations we go through from puberty all the way up into those senior years, they don't like to study us. And then nutrition
Yeah.
studies, I've been, diving into that quite a bit. They're often so flawed because they can't control for every single thing out there. And
Mm-hmm.
they actually have, a better outcome looking at the exercise type studies, which
Mm-hmm.
kind of brings me to my next discussion point with you is, okay, exercise home, exercise gym. Let's take a look at both. If a woman's hitting the gym, what do you think are the best exercises for her to focus on?
Oh, okay. So again, what level are you at? Because if you're just getting started, I think you could probably do the same exercises at home or in the gym and it would be the same. You want to get compound full body exercises that are going to start to strengthen your entire body. So we're looking at squats, for example. Those are key, like sitting down and standing up. You need squats. You need to be doing that sort of thing. Planks as well are so beneficial. Row exercises, like you can do it. There's a whole variation of ways you can do it, whether it's with cables or at the gym or whether you're doing dumbbells at home. But if you're just starting out, I think really gym or home are equal. I think the difference becomes as you're starting to lift really heavy, because when you are lifting heavy, if you have things that can help you get to a heavier weight and really push things, like cables. If you drop a cable because it's too heavy, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to fall on your head. You drop the cable and you're done. I love leg press machine because I can lift very, very heavy, and there's safeties in place with that. And that's when I'm doing a strength phase where I'm really trying to build lean mass. So you can go very heavy with that. Rows at the gym, again, cables, or you can do variations with barbells as well. I have barbells at home. I think that also depends on what people have at their in-home gym, right? Like I am equipped here. I have barbells, weights, dumbbells, pull-up bar, the whole 9 yards. But if you don't at home, then you're going to need to be in a gym, especially for the machines. If you bought all the machines and they're at home, good for you. But machines are going to help you get into a heavier lifting zone. The issue with machines is that they do not follow our natural pattern of movement. So I would rather start people, if you're just getting started, do it at home with barbells or dumbbells. The sitting down to standing up, because we have almost a C rotation when we sit down to stand up. Whereas if you're doing it on a machine, we have a linear movement pattern. So we'll push something forward, we'll push something back, or we're not using the whole body because we're lying down or sitting down. Whereas if you're doing a squat, you're sitting down and standing up. You'll notice that you've got this C rotation. So you're standing up, you're moving your hips forward and thrusting your hips forward. And that is something we need for function in life. So I think it's really important to have a foundation where it's function first. And then once you understand how to move properly, then you can start with the heavier lifting and having the leg press and the row. There's another thing I'll say about the gym. We know with age, high intensity interval training is incredibly important for our lung capacity, our VO2 max, for insulin sensitivity, to be able to stabilize our insulin hormones. But a lot of people, especially with age, they find that getting into that zone, they can't push themselves to that level at home. It's very, very hard. But a lot of the studies that have been done are actually on stationary bikes. And so we find that if you're on a stationary bike, you're going as fast as you can and you've got that resistance on it, you can push yourself really hard, get up into that high intensity interval training zone and get your heart rate really working, your VO2 max working. But at the same time, it's easy on the knees, it's low impact, and you can definitely get there. Whereas at home, I'm going to ask you to jump or, get into these fast-paced movement patterns that you might either lose form or you feel it in your joints. And so using the bike, or if you had one, I guess if you bought one at home, but I just go to the gym if I'm going to do that sort of thing anyways. That's better.
Oh, the bike is so good because some people can't jump. Like with my back, even once I'm fully recovered, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to jump because I have degenerative disc disease, pretty much all the way down. So I don't want to have a repeat situation, of having to do another surgery. So
Yeah.
probably that's going to be off for me. So that means I have to get creative. I have to put a treadmill at an incline and
Mm-hmm.
really, and you can get your heart rate up if you pick up that speed and go up that incline. Or the bike is such a good way to get that. And yeah, jumping, not everybody can jump, and that is the downside to trying to do a HIIT workout at home. Yeah, jump rope's great, but
Mm-hmm.
not everybody can do that. I've even heard of women that have pelvic floor issues going, no,
Mm-hmm.
if I do that, I'm going to pee. Like it's not,
Yeah.
I've had
But
all these
on that,
kids.
yeah, oops. But on that, if you do have pelvic floor issues, I think for you, your first place to start is going to a pelvic floor physiotherapist. There are
Hmm.
actual exercises you need to do for your pelvic floor that are a way above and beyond the Kegel, like both front and back. We need it for everywhere. And I think that often goes overlooked. So many women think this is just what's going to happen for the rest of my life. I'm going to pee every time I jump or cough. And you can get strengthening and stretching because it's just like any muscle. A muscle that's tight, that has not been stretched, is very weak. So, because you can't get that full range of motion and that full length. And it's the same thing for our pelvic floor. So, oftentimes our pelvic floor is weak, but those muscles can also get really tight and weak. So, you need to understand how to stretch and to strengthen that area. And that would be your first place to start. And absolutely, leaks are more likely to occur over 50 because estrogen helps with that elasticity and
Hmm.
keeping everything pulled in, right? But it doesn't mean you are destined to leak forever. And wouldn't it be lovely if one day you could sneeze and you wouldn't leak, right? Like, I mean, that would be lovely.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's like one of those things that mom never tells us. So you're like turning 50 and all of a sudden you have that big sneeze and it's like, "Oh my gosh, what just happened?" Nobody told me this, and it
Yeah.
is so important. And I had recently learned men can get the pelvic floor issues as well, which surprised me.
Oh,
I didn't realize that.
interesting.
So I think it's good for all of us to be thinking in that direction. What exercises or stretches do you think are good for the pelvic floor?
Well, everybody knows about the Kegel for sure,
Hmm.
but deep squats are also really good because you're stretching out those little muscles that actually attach onto the pelvic area. So doing deep squats, if you can, again, it depends on what's going on with you, your knees, all of that sort of fun stuff. Sitting on a stability ball and connecting with your pelvic floor and working on what's known as the elevator, that's another great exercise. So you don't just pull up completely. Like with a Kegel, for example, you're holding yourself as if you went to the bathroom and you want to stop your urine from flowing, right? But can you go up like an elevator? Can you go up just one floor, just a little bit? And then can you hold it and go up the next floor? And the next. So think of it like you're contracting a little and then a little bit more, and you're going all the way up. You're holding it at the top. People are getting into the elevator. Okay, all good. And then you're slowly relaxing. So things like that.
Oh, I
Yeah.
like that. I was actually doing it while you were describing it because I'm like, let me try this out.
Well,
Well,
it's
the
hard,
lovely
right?
thing, yeah, it was hard. The lovely thing is you could do it anywhere and nobody would be the wiser.
That's right.
Your
Although
work.
if you're really weak in that area, you might make faces and people would be wondering, like you might be like, oh, what's happening here? Is this working for me? And
Grimacing.
yeah, and the other thing people don't realize is that your anal area, like your anus, is also the same way.
Mhm.
You have to contract and you have to relax that area. And so, can you do that? Because a lot of people, like, especially if those muscles get tight, they start to notice issues like they'll get a shooting pain going up. Or they'll have bowel movements that they are eating all their fiber, but things aren't coming out really easily still.
Right.
And it's because things get very tight again and weak there. So what are you doing to strengthen that? So that elevator, try doing the elevator for the back as well as the front. And then try and separate it so you're not doing it all at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Now that's really hard.
That would be a crucial point there. What causes the tightness? Because you've referred to the tightness, because we think of like pelvic floor, or I did, pelvic floor weakness, like everything's loosey goosey.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So just like any other muscle in our body, we can hold tension. So a perfect example is in our shoulders and our upper traps, right? Like when we're stressed out, we're like, okay, I'm like, ugh. And then so I don't know about you, but for a lot of my clients, I'm like, relax your shoulders back and down.
Hmm.
Like we work on upper trap at stretching exercises as well, because this is the area that tension goes. But without even realizing it, we can actually create that same tension down there. And for some of it, it might just be like years of holding in or sucking in your stomach when you're wearing something tight,
Oh yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
that affects the pelvic floor. So let's say you're sucking in to wear a tighter outfit. Maybe you're really stressed out and you don't even realize it, but you're tightening your stomach muscles a lot. If you exercise and you're doing a lot of planks or core work, that can also affect the tightness in your pelvic floor area because it's connected, right? The way you breathe is also connected. Are you able to do deep inhales and exhales? When you have a really great deep inhale, your diaphragm is able to help stretch out your pelvic floor because it's connected. You've got your diaphragm that will push down and then
Hmm.
it'll stretch and help with the pelvic floor. If your breathing is limited, which I think a lot of people that don't do yoga, we just breathe because we're breathing. Like it's a natural thing to do, but there is no deep inhales or exhales that actually create a lot of stretch and help create that healthy relationship with the pelvic floor. And so the pelvic floor gets really, really tight. So there are a lot of factors to it: stress, holding in the tension, exercising, and not properly breathing. All of those factors together can make that a lot tighter.
The breathing makes sense. I am notorious for holding my breath when something's difficult, like being in yoga and holding a pose, and I'll catch
Mhm.
myself kind of getting a little dizzy because I do hot yoga and
Oh.
going, oh, why are you holding your breath? That's ridiculous. Like you don't need to do that. Or if I'm tense during the day, I'll be
Mhm.
breathing shallow, just out of the not taking full and deep breaths. I think that's really key.
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Well, Alicia, I want to be respectful of your time. We have covered so many different topics, and I've absolutely loved it. You have so much knowledge. I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing your expertise. As we start to wrap up, couple of things. How can the listeners reach you, work with you, follow your work? And then also, was there something that we didn't talk about today that you think would be valuable for women to know?
I think first, if I we've already really touched on it. If you're not lifting weights now, start lifting. It's not too late. You can enhance lean muscle. You can get your strength. You can look great at any age, really. So that's my big takeaway. Start lifting weights and find your why for that. As for what I do, I tend to work with people that are just starting out. So just starting with weight training and who've never really done it before, even if they've done all the marathons and the running, or those that have never really done exercise at all. Maybe they don't like it. I actually have a YouTube video on what to do if you don't like to exercise and lift weights. But so if you'd like to learn more about the science behind the fat loss, strength, and optimal health, and how to cycle yourself through the phases. I have a free masterclass called the 3-phase food and fitness formula every woman over 50 needs to know. And I'll give you the link so you can sign up if you're interested in learning the science side with your lifestyle. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'll make sure that it's in the show notes so that women can sign up for that. Quick question, when you're teaching women to lift and they're beginners, are you doing so through videos that you post, or are you face-to-face via Zoom?
So I have one-on-one clients that are online, and through my group program, everything is already created. The workouts are already created, but the
Okay.
group component, that is where they can come to me and they can get modifications, that we can shift things real time there for them. And I think that's one more thing I would say as a takeaway. If there's an exercise you can't do because it hurts, then always ask for how you can modify instead of eliminate the exercise. Because I think a lot of people say, this exercise hurts, I'm not going to do this exercise anymore. But the truth is, it could just be your mechanics on how you're doing that. Something could just be really tight, and we need to work on stretching that. Some of it might be that you do need to elevate yourself or have a different way of doing it, but don't eliminate the exercise, because there are so many great exercises that enhance your quality of life and your strength, and people get rid of them for ones that are not as good and not good quality. So I think that's my takeaway. And so with that, in my program, they can ask for modifications, and they can get those modifications. We can figure out exactly what's going on with their body, and I keep my groups really, really small so that everybody gets that attention in the group.
Oh, that's wonderful. And hitting on those modifications, because you think about it, there is a bazillion ways to squat. So if
Mhm.
one way doesn't work, there's other ways. You don't have to have a barbell on your back, or,
That's
you
right.
don't have to have your feet narrow. Maybe they need to be wider or heels elevated. So I'm with you. I feel like I'm queen of modifications with all
Yes.
the things I've been through, and then having personal trained. There's usually always another way
Yeah, and
if
I'm
you just
sure
seek
you're
that
not going
out.
to have 100-pound bar on your back anytime soon, right? Like, I mean, you're
Right.
yeah, you need to know how to modify. So, yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
Love that. Well, again, thank you so much, Alicia. I appreciate you coming on the show, and you've just given so many great tips and such wonderful information to the listeners. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.